Hi, everyone. Now that we are done talking about the four main causes of World War I and the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, we are going to get into the actual fighting of World War One and how that fighting actually changed warfare as it was known up until that point. So, as we know, with our Triple Alliance and our Triple Entente, Germany is going to align themselves with Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire and Bulgaria, while France and Russia are really going to be the two first powers that join up with Serbia. And Germany kind of finds themselves in a little bit of a tough spot here because, first of all, they are surrounded on two sides by Russia and France, and no country wants to find themselves in a situation where they have to fight on both sides. They have to fight both in the West against France and in the East against Russia. So Germany had actually devised a plan a while ago for this exact situation. It was developed by a guy named Alfred von Schlieffen, and it became known as the Schlieffen Plan, named obviously after the guy who developed it. And they actually had this in line all the way back in 1905. So it's been a plan for a while. Germany had kind of prepared for this, and the plan um, is very much reliant on everything going right. Um, if things work out the way that Germany wants them to work out, this plan very much could have been successful. But there's a lot of moving pieces, and everything has to go perfectly right for it to work. So it was made up of three different areas. The first one is the border between Germany and France. This area here used to actually belong to France, but Germany took it in a war that the two countries had fought a couple decades prior. So Germany was actually going to put a pretty thin defensive line here. They weren't worried about France regaining that territory. They had bigger things in mind. All right, so that's step one. Step two was to protect the other side of their country against Russia. Okay, now they didn't put a lot of troops over here either because they were anticipating Russia taking a while to mobilize or get ready for war. They were thinking it was going to take Russia at least 6 weeks to mobilize. All right, that word mobilize means to prepare for war. All right, so they didn't believe that Russia was going to be ready anytime soon. Um, the third and most important part of this was the largest part of the German army was actually going to be marching through Belgium into France in an effort to capture the capital city right here of Paris. Now, again, this plan was to knock out France quickly. That way, they could then deal with Russia. It would avoid a two-front war where they'd have to be fighting on both sides if they could knock out France before Russia had a chance to really get involved. So again, had everything worked out the way it was supposed to, this may have been, a successful German campaign. They actually believed that the war was going to be over by Christmas of 1914. And it started in, July of 1914, late July of 1914. So they were pretty confident that that this strategy was going to work. There were a few things that they did not count on, though. Right? First of all, at this time in 1914, United Kingdom, England had not gotten involved in this war. However, Germany was going to do something that was going to essentially force England's hand. England and the country of Belgium had an agreement, an alliance here that basically said that England was going to protect Belgium's neutrality. That Belgium was, not going to be involved in any wars or anything, and people needed to respect that choice. Well, Germany, they get a hold of England. They're like, "Hey, how seriously do you take this treaty with Belgium?" And England's like, "Well, we take it very seriously. We're going to come to the defense." if necessary. So Germany considered that for a little bit, and they decided that they were going to move forward with their plan anyways. So again, like we said a minute ago, there were pretty thin defenses down here, kind of towards Alsace-Lorraine, knowing that France was going to try to advance and regain this territory. And that was part of Germany's plan. They wanted that to happen. And sure enough, that is what happened. Meanwhile, Germany is going to march up north through Belgium, all right, and kind of down towards Paris, all right. Being able to capture the capital city would have been a really big advantage. Okay, so they're marching down this way, and the plan was after they captured Paris, then they would continue on and they would continue on and come from behind to get. Sorry about this, guys. I got a new tool I'm using, all right, as you can tell with this map making. All right, still trying to get used to it a little bit. All right, but again, their plan was to come up here and surprise the French. Okay, but again, the plan didn't go like it was supposed to. And part of that is because of the country of Belgium. When Germany invaded Belgium, England immediately got involved. If you look down here in the blue here, this is the French army. But you see this box here that says BEF. That's the British Expeditionary Force. So the British were involved pretty early on. But they also believed that they were going to be able to march through Belgium pretty quickly. That there was not going to be really a whole lot of resistance, but they ended up being wrong. Belgium actually put up a decent fight for the size of their country and the size of their military. Eventually, I mean, they were really no match for the German army, but they did slow them down quite a bit in a couple of ways. They had a line of fortifications that took the Germans a little bit to get through. And then the German plan also relied on the existence and presence of railroads because they needed to move their troops quickly. And railroads were the best way to do that. But as Belgium retreated, they began to destroy bridges. They began to destroy the railroad tracks. So the Germans had to rely on things like horses and mules and cars to transport their troops. And they're trying to transport roughly 2 million people at this time. So that is a major problem for the Germans. Also, they make a mistake when coming down to the south here. They leave their right flank open, meaning the right side of their army is vulnerable. The French and the British actually come up here and hit the supply lines of the German army, which causes all sorts of problems and confusion along their front line. All right, they eventually get to the Marne River, which is right here. All right, this eventually becomes known as the Battle of the Marne. All right, so that whole plan about getting and surprising the French troops here, okay, this does not end up happening, right? Because they never make it past the Marne River. In fact, they begin to get pushed back enough to where the Germans begin to entrench themselves. They literally build trenches, hundreds of miles of trenches that allow them to kind of protect themselves. And the French and the British, they decide to do the same. And so this ends up turning into what World War I was really known for, and that's trench warfare, where they don't really move for roughly 3 years because countries are just, they're too entrenched in where they are. They're too protected. It's too hard to move them. So that ends up making countries have to be creative. They had to innovate. Um, and this is where you start to see the development of new weapons and new technology to combat this trench warfare. They had to do something to get them out of the trenches. Meanwhile, another problem that the Germans run into is that the Russians, they don't take 6 weeks to mobilize. They are ready pretty quickly, and they are starting to move towards Germany as well. So the Germans, they have to take troops out away from the Schlieffen Plan, or from this side of the Schlieffen Plan, and they have to move them east. All right, so that weakens these forces over here. So the Schlieffen Plan, like I said, may have worked if everything went the way it was supposed to, but they ran into problems that they were not expecting, and it didn't end up working. So what you're going to be doing today is you're going to actually be looking at some of the innovations and the creative ways that that the Germans, no, not just the Germans, both sides had to find a way to get people out of their trenches. So you're going to be taking a look at 3 different technologies that were developed during World War I, as well as an article on trench warfare. And you're going to be working on an organizer. Okay, the 3 technologies that you're going to be working on that were developed or at least advanced in World War I were machine guns, poison gas, and tanks. So in the link that you have on Canvas, you're going to read machine guns, poison gas, and tanks, and work on this organizer. What is it? All right, brief description of what this technology is, and then how does it change how war is fought? What did it do to war that changed it? All right, so poison gas, tanks as well. And there will be a separate article on trench warfare on Canvas for you to read. And again, do the same thing. What is trench warfare? Give me a brief description. And then how did it change war? Again, if you have questions, make sure that you email me or message me on Canvas.